Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for stopping by. This morning, I would just like to make this video to give greater context to some of our recent material inconsistencies videos. The TLDR version for you folks who aren't watching the whole videos. With the decarburization issue, I would just like to explain that, how that occurred, and just my perspective of it. I know the other companies involved have their own versions of what they think happened, and there's some feelings about that, I think, on their end, but just from me as a customer, I would like to explain my position on this. For anybody wondering also, we have not had alternatives to CPM steels until extremely recently. So I've very much been a hostage to all of this situation and trying to keep my business viable in the face of some of these things. If you want more information on that, please go check out some of our more recent videos. If you really listen to what I'm saying, a lot of things start making sense. I just didn't have alternatives, but now we do. So I feel really comfortable talking about all of this. So leading up to the decarburization, you can see in our videos, I'd already been giving the folks at Niagara and Crucible some feedback about material strain I was seeing. Some of the sheets of MagnaCut were good. This also relates to 3V and some other grades to some extent, but some of the MagnaCut sheets were really nice. They were just what I was expecting, and then others were falling short. I was seeing some retained stress and things from the processing, and to a lesser extent, some void issues and things like that I was trying to help them get dialed in, at least I thought, in the spirit of cooperation, to help them get that dialed in, that they could look at their processes and know what's going on that are causing like some to be nice and some to not be nice. But what I didn't realize is Peters was doing something else to try and relieve some of that on their end. But we had gone into this very carefully. We did a sample batch, we did a larger batch, and we were giving feedback the whole time on that, as you can see in the videos. And I learned later this decarburization had been happening over at Peters Heat Treat due to a misunderstanding about it handling the material. They were doing a stress relief because they were seeing what I was seeing, just a massive amount of part movement with this grade. And again, I think this is due to just the material sometimes hitting subcritical temperatures while it's being handled, just some temperature inconsistencies during processing, and I think that all that stress isn't always coming out of the sheets. And it manifests in parts. The faster and harder you quench these parts, which we want the performance, so we're doing that, the more it illustrates these material deficiencies. You're converting that material really quickly, and it really changes the structure of that material, and there's a big difference between a slow quench and a fast quench in what's going on within the structure of the material. So we want performance, they want performance, they want everybody to be happy. So what they were doing was to try and get some of that warping under control. They were doing a stress relieving in a atmospheric furnace. It's an industry practice. They do it with a lot of grades successfully, and there were no indications on the data sheet or in any of the steel development to tell them that was something wrong that they were doing. When I came on the scene finally and was affected by this, Ellie reminded me that was around 857. There's a 10-part discrepancy between our paperwork and Peters, but to our paperwork, to our hand count, there was 857 parts, I believe, that it wiped out all of our production. So we didn't ask for a stress relief. This was something that was just, they were doing as a standard practice to try and get warpage under control, which I think that ties back to some of my feedback that I was sharing with Crucible and Niagara. But what I learned later was this had been going on for a little bit, and Peters had been talking to Niagara about it. They saw this black shit coming out of the parts, and nobody knew what was going on. Apparently the folks at Niagara and Crucible didn't know what was going on, and it was a slow ball to get some discovery on that. I think just protecting the image of this material, but Peters hated working with it, and they try to guarantee flatness. So they were doing the best they could based on their understanding of the material to get the flatness issue under control. So when I came onto the scene here and was affected so greatly, I was mad because I walked into this carefully and I thought I vetted everything. And then we went loud to meet demand. And I doubled down on it because that's what people wanted. So that's what we did. So I don't really understand what I could have done differently at all on my end to address this situation. And it all got thrown back in our lap. And other than a couple of sheets I mentioned in another video, 2 due to the material strain and the void issue, and then later the warranty solve in the face of like 20, almost 30 sheets of material loss, they gave us another 2 sheets of material, which also turned out to have some voids and stuff in it. So I don't really see that where that was a warranty solve, and I hope you guys can see that I fight for you, but I didn't have any alternatives to these materials until very recently. And so I just wanted to explain that and have you guys have a greater understanding of what happened. Where I'm confused is reading the articles, according to Larry Thomas, Peters Heat Treat was intimately involved with the development of all of these steels and coming up with some of the processes. So I don't know before a public release, you'll see in an internal memo here, maybe Ellie can put it back on the screen in this video, where how they're coming up with these annealing temps and these handling temps if they're still refining their annealing temps on the fly on us to get some of the stress out of here and to resolve some of the inconsistencies. But then how do you know how to do a stress relieving, and why aren't there any indications on the data sheet that this material is hypersensitive to decarburization? There's just so many things that logically don't make sense to me about the rollout, and this has affected a lot of people. And if you go around the forums, there's a lot of part warpage and stuff with this material and some inconsistencies, and I was just trying to do my best to get some of those dialed in. And I was told that we're working on that, so the next batches should be better, and then this decarburization thing happened. So how that affected us, I just want to explain this. This wiped out all of our production. After getting some good feedback from the guys at Dutch Bushcraft Knives, like I felt really good about it. I thought we were being seen finally after a false start. I'll talk about that later, but I thought we were finally being seen for the work we're doing. I could see that these guys were genuinely happy. I was proud of what we were doing, the direction we were moving in. And instead of getting caught up, if you see the dates, we were right on time with our delivery with that. And all of our progress got wiped off the board. So instead of finally getting ahead and ramping up to meet demand and getting in that better place where we've been pushing since separating from Millet, we had nothing to deliver. And we were made to deal with the entire problem on our own. And I said in that video, not to be crass, but I'm not going to eat a yard of shit for this. But it turns out I did in fact eat a yard of shit for this, and I don't know where any of this is my responsibility. Most people have checked out by now, but I'll explain here. According to my insurance carrier, we had a claim for this. But when it turns out, like on page 67 of our insurance policy, if there's something that happens with the materials that causes the materials to destroy themselves, that should be the material vendor or supplier's responsibility. That should be their insurance or their liability for this. So on insurance side, I don't have any avenue for that to get whole on that. So this wiped out all of our income, all of our forward momentum. It really messed us up. That's egg on the face of the guys at Dutch Bushcraft Knives. That's egg on our face when we really just want to do a good job for you guys and do the best job possible and make people happy. But I see some opinions out there on what we should have done or could have done, and I thought all this bared explaining, and I hope you guys can understand that we walked into this carefully. And I didn't ask for what was occurring up there. So no matter what, none of this in any capacity, unless somebody can explain this differently, is our fault, but it very much became our responsibility. So this affected 5.1s, EDC 2.7s, GSO 4.5 Bushcrafts and standards, some of our Vendetta series offerings. It's just so many things, EDC 4s, it just wiped them off the board. And I was counting on that. I took on this overhead to do the job where the other company couldn't follow through. I just want to make you guys happy. So I doubled down and got this equipment, and I'm hiring people. So it takes money to keep all of that running. This isn't pre-order money. These are loans that I got to be good on my word. And this isn't, we are a small operation, and I don't take an excessive amount of orders to create some big backlog. Our backlog is not as big as people think. Our production isn't as big as people think. We are a small team. We focus on doing the best job possible. So we've only been able to survive all of this because we've been very, very frugal and very careful in our steps forward. We don't want to get too heavy so that we can't, pivot and respond to these sort of issues. I've had to learn early on that there's things that are sometimes thrown in our lap that we just have to deal with. And when I didn't have any alternative to these CPM steels, we had to deal with it. So in the past, what I would do to make, people whole, there was delays, but I would get lending to get more materials so that I would have some extras again, like I was planning, and then move on to the next step. But it's very hard to do a business that way, and I'm tired of that model. So I'm deciding to speak out about this. I know this is affecting other people, and it's crushed small businesses. And I feel it's important now to help you guys understand what can happen, what some different people are going through. And this isn't, this means a lot to a lot of people. And now that I'm doing this and we're doing the job to the level we are, I care about this a bit in just what I'm bringing to the world. Like I said, in my lizard brain, I want to walk away from this every day, but I'm committed to it now because we're making something of genuine value. For the dollar you're spending, I don't know many things that are that nice for what amount of dollars you spend. So now I'm going to talk about some of the K890 and some of these things, but I hope that helps you guys understand. Go watch these videos and really listen to them the whole way through, and things will start making sense from the mid 2015 on up with 20 CV. Back in 2015-16 when I was having issues with that, the determination was 20 CV might have chunky carbides. Well, I see chunky carbides as if I can see it with my eye, that's alloy segregation. That's not chunky carbides. That's deficient materials. When you start looking at how Niagara processes materials, where everything has to conform to one processing and annealing formula, well, if you look at 20 CV, 1600 to 1650 degrees is not the appropriate annealing temp according to the old Latrobe Duratec 20 CV data sheets and the M390 data sheets. They're compositionally the same materials, but they're handled differently. And I think that's why, M390 machine's pretty nice. It doesn't seem to have the same stiffness and fragility to it in the raw sheets, where 20 CV, it's a nightmare. That's where I stopped using it. We were made promises when we moved down with Millet that, the 20 CV issues now were old issues. And I learned again, getting the materials, same sort of issues. So I drew back, and rather than making that your guys' fault, anything that was deficient, we held on to, and I just had a delay. We knew MagnaCut was coming up, so we hung out, we replaced those with MagnaCut that, early on it seemed a bit nicer, with some improvements it would have been really nice, but then the decarburization thing happened, and that just wiped out everything that we had on the board. So I hope that you guys can understand my position on this and transitioning to some of these materials as quickly as possible now that we have these options available. I can show you guys these just couple of sheets behind me. I don't think some of you understand how expensive these materials are. This looks like rusty crap behind me, but this is like a car. This material costs over $20,000 that's behind me. These things are very, very expensive, and when companies won't get behind these things, especially at scale for a small business, it dramatically impacts our business trajectory and our ability to serve you. So if you're still confused on some of that, please sit down, grab some popcorn, watch some of our material inconsistency videos, material observations, CPM criticisms, MagnaCut update and criticisms, and just really listen to what I'm saying, and you'll start to come to some greater understandings. I'm really good at seeing patterns, and when we really got our hands into the manufacturing, there's some things that I was seeing that need talked about. So like I said, now that we have alternatives, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to show you guys everything visually. So it's just not my words. I'm showing you what I'm seeing. So I'm going to get to making some other videos real quick before anybody comes in here in the shop. I'm on a limited time, but thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope this gave you guys some greater context into what those internal memos were and what we were trying to work through. So we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for stopping by.